What's up, everyone? Today we're talking about microphones. What are microphones? What do they do? How do they work? We're going to give you a brief overview. So a microphone is a transducer. A transducer is a device that transforms one type of energy into another. So in this case, we're transforming frequency, sound vibrations in the air, into electrical signals. And those electrical signals can then be recorded or sent out over a loudspeaker to a bunch of awesome people. Microphones are great because if I'm playing in a loud club, I don't want to have to shout over the music. I want to be able to talk to people at a comfortable level, and so that's why we have microphones. There's a bunch of different types of microphones. Today we're just going to do an overview of the three main types that recording engineers or live sound engineers would run into. There are, of course, more types out there. Maybe we'll get into those another day, but for today we're just going to talk about the big ones. So when we talk about microphones and their performance, often we're talking about their pickup pattern. And what that means is essentially the area that around the microphone that's actually going to be catching the sound. Sometimes the way that I like to think about pickup patterns in real time is by imagining that the microphone itself is an ice cream cone and the pickup pattern is the ice cream itself, right? Yummy. All right, so pickup patterns. In the infographic that I have up on the screen, top figure all the way to the left is omnidirectional. That's essentially like putting a globe on top of your ice cream cone. You're going to pick up pretty much everything equally, at least that's the idea. In the middle we have unidirectional or cardioid. Most microphones you're going to encounter in a live sound scenario are going to be cardioid. And that's a good thing because it's sort of rejecting a lot of the information behind the microphone. And on real live stages or in live sound scenarios, you don't want what's going on behind the microphone. You want what's going into the microphone. It's another reason it's so important to talk into the microphone. We'll get into that later. The last figure on the top, all the way to the right, is bidirectional. Essentially, that would be you have the microphone set up almost like a post in front of you, and it would be picking up a lot of the room noise behind you as well as whatever you're putting into it. You're putting in information from the front and the back, but there are nodes on each side where information is getting not picked up. So that's what makes it different than omnidirectional. Again, all the figures at the bottom sort of show you that ice cream cone shape and where you need to be picking it up with the different pickup patterns. So that's pickup patterns for now, also known as polar patterns. The first type of microphone we're going to talk about is one that's not super common, but it is out there, and that's known as a ribbon mic. And I have one here that I actually built myself when I was in school. It's broken now, but it was at one point a working ribbon mic, so here's that. Ribbon mics are very sensitive. They are bidirectional, meaning that this is the scenario where you have it stuck up in front of you. Here would be where you're singing into, and you're also getting information from behind it. These posts here would be, that's like we talked about on the polar pattern, those would be the nodes where you're not getting anything. So ribbon microphones are very fragile because they have actually, I don't know if you can see, but there is actually a little small piece of something. I forget what it is. I'm sorry. But it's fragile and they break like mine is broken. So unfortunately I'm not using a ribbon mic. You're not going to run into ribbon mics live so much as you will in studio, so don't worry about it too much. If you run into a ribbon mic, talk to an engineer. Just wanted to show you what ribbon mics are so that you know that they're out there. Next we're going to talk about condenser microphones. Condenser microphones are awesome. They're also typically found more in studio scenarios, although it's not impossible to see them live. Places where you would see them live would maybe be on somewhere like a professional soundstage where there's an orchestra and they want to mic whole sections of people, but oftentimes they'll put in these walls or what we call baffles to stop sound from other instruments getting in. Point being, condenser microphones pick up a lot of noise. They're great for recording things that are far away. In fact, I'm talking into a condenser microphone right now. I have a picture I'm going to put up, but my favorite condenser microphone that I own is my Octava, and that's what I'm using to record all of these videos. So that's how I can be so far away and still talk to you folks and have you hear me. This is an example of a cheaper condenser microphone that I have. Another thing about condensers is that they require something called phantom power. Phantom power is 48 volts of electricity sent through either your mixing board or your audio interface, and what that does is it amplifies the signal that's coming into the microphone. So it's just another volume boost. Condenser microphones don't work without phantom power, so you have to make sure it's on. Where it gets tricky is that you certainly, here's rule number one about phantom power. Don't plug mics in and unplug mics, any sort of cable actions with microphones or devices, while phantom power is active. That's something you need to be really careful about because phantom power can actually hurt certain devices. It's awesome, but it's dangerous. It's with great power comes great responsibility, something like that. With great phantom power comes great responsibility. Anyway, condenser mics, you'll find them in studios, you'll find them live. They're awesome. Try one. One more thing about condensers, their pickup patterns are generally the most varied. In fact, some of them even have multiple switches that you can choose, from cardioid to omnidirectional to bidirectional to hypercardioid, all sorts of different pickup patterns for condensers. Very versatile mics, great to have in your arsenal. Finally, we're going to talk about dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones are the most popular microphones ever. They're easy to produce, they do their job well, and you're just going to see them all the time, especially this one. This is the Shure SM58. This is the first microphone that I ever bought, probably about 15 years ago. It's still going strong. It's fantastic. We're going to do a whole video on the SM58, but for now, just understand that it's legendary, basically. Most dynamic microphones are cardioid in their pickup pattern, essentially meaning, if we're talking like this, it's not going to be getting information coming this direction. That's why it's so important to hold the mic to your face. Dynamic mics do not require phantom power. They're typically pretty safe from phantom power. You can't really hurt them that bad. But again, it's never a bad idea to be careful when you're using your phantom power and your dynamic mics. So we need to have a really quick chat about mic technique, because when I work as a live sound tech or even as a DJ when I hand someone the microphone, the hardest thing to do somehow is to convince them to just speak into the microphone. And like I've said before, it's not going to pick you up if you're not in the right place. I guess that makes sense. Honestly, I blame movies and television, because in movies and television you always see somebody standing speaking like this. And honestly, most of the time when you see someone standing with a microphone like this, or one of the ones that's like a podium microphone, like the sort of thing that someone would speak into behind a podium, like an elected official or something like that, those are honestly probably condenser microphones. They're probably very small pickup pattern so that they're only shooting right at the face of the person. But again, this isn't going to cut it when it comes to dynamic microphones. You really need to be right on the microphone. I actually set up a little experiment that I'm going to show to you right now that will show you the proximity effect of a dynamic microphone with a couple different sound sources, being one generated sound tone, one shaker, and a little bit of my vocals. So here's that. Okay, this is our microphone proximity test. I have my SM58 set up right here. We're going to start with a constant tone played by my cell phone, same volume. And the last thing I'm going to do is try a little bit of vocals. This mic is very sensitive, especially with vocals, and you can get a whole lot of different tones just based on where you put your face in relation to the microphone, where you put your microphone in relation to your face. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2, check 1 2, check. Crazy. Alright, now that we have a basic understanding of the proximity effect of a dynamic microphone, I have to include a note about the pop culture phenomenon of dropping the mic, because I think it is currently misunderstood essentially all of what that's saying when you drop the mic. So, to drop the mic, everybody knows that it's the end of a statement, boom, you've said what you need to say, the conversation's over, right? It's epic for that. But what you're also saying that I think people are missing is that, so when someone like Tyga does that on stage, he's got a nice wireless dynamic microphone like this one, and he's going to go, boom, we've all seen it. This is exactly what it looks like, right? The other hidden message in there is that when someone goes up to him after the show and says, hey, you broke my $500 microphone, he goes, whatever, I'm a millionaire, I'll pay for it. So if you're in a bar and you see me DJing or whatever event that I'm at, and you take my mic and you drop it, the understanding is you better be ready to pay for it, because these things are not cheap. So while it can be a super epic way to end a conversation, if you're a millionaire, I'm not, please don't drop a mic. It's just not a nice thing to do. And if you are going to drop a mic, be ready to buy a whole brand new one for whoever's mic you dropped. Now that we have a basic understanding of microphones, I'm going to do a quick summary and talk to you about, if you're a musician or a vocalist especially, why it's so important to have a microphone. The first is quality control. If you're going to a venue or you're performing somewhere, wherever, you want to know that your equipment is going to be representing you as an artist in a way that looks good and doesn't hurt your performance. So it's not a bad idea to get yourself a microphone. One more quick rant. I went to school for music, and I was a guitar major. Pretty much all the instrument majors that I knew had invested a decent amount of money in their equipment, like I said, to make sure that they sound good and that they're represented well. I can't tell you how many people I ran into in school who were professional vocalists that didn't own their own microphone. And to me that seemed a little silly when you have all these other instrumentalists spending a lot of money making sure that their music rig is up to par and professional. These are currently retailing for $100. Back then they were $90. They're never going to be expensive, and like I said, they'll last you forever. On top of that, I worked in the office that rented out equipment to these singers, and the microphones were only so many for a very large school, meaning that everyone's sharing, talking, spitting, kissing these microphones. At the very least, in the age of global pandemics, you want your own microphone because you don't want to share spit with other people, or at least I don't. Not going to kink shame. I hope this video has been educational for you, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Thank you for checking this out, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.